Okay. Happy now, Pierre? So, how we think we should feel, how we feel. What we think we should do, what we're doing. These concepts that we're creating in our mind, and then we're disappointed because we had this concept, we're not following the concept, we're not actually doing what the concept was saying. This, I should get up today and I should be doing this, and then actually we're not doing it, and so then we get disappointed. Then there's guilt. So remember yesterday, we said we should steer away from the guilt. We're looking more for regret, that we had an opportunity, we could have done something yesterday, but we didn't take that opportunity. So we're going to change today. So regret is about learning from the past experience and then change, as opposed to beating yourself up about it. And self-blame, about not doing what we think we should be doing. Do we have self-blame? This again is about putting yourself down, having low self-esteem, low self-confidence. So we should be careful of that. Then under expression of anger. These are just notes I have. So in under expression of anger, it can often lead to depression. Under expressors may be unable to set boundaries or to define who they are and what they want. So if you find that you're the push it down type of person, the under expressor, we've got the over expressor, it just comes out, they vomit. And then the under expressor, the suppression, the pushing it down, they find it difficult to define who they are and what they want. So they're not expressing it, not negotiating it. They may suffer from obsessive worry, compulsive behavior, sleep complaints, difficult to trace physical causes. So this is the person who is always experiencing sort of something physical, but then the doctors can't really get to the root of it. What is it really? Maybe lacking direction or vision in their work. So working and can be managing, but don't seem to have any clear cut, I'm going to go in this direction, this is what I want to achieve, this is what I want to do. Because this under expression of anger is constantly confusing them. Because the anger and the ignorance coming together creates confusion. Like I said, it confuses the mind. So then taking the energy and not giving clear direction. Underexpressors often stay isolated and they rarely complain. Rarely. Not often complaining. So underexpressors often stay isolated. They don't often complain, except every now and again when there's a disagreement, they can go off like a volcano and erupt because of the suppression. So this constant suppression can lead to, in the end, you say something small and then they erupt out of what would you say? The eruption is much bigger than the cause, right? So the cause is small, but the eruption is huge, and you wonder what on earth happened. You start to understand, oh, this person is suppressing a lot of emotions. So they can have anxiety, depression, or a major breakdown in relationships. And when that happens, it appears to be a catalyst for them to seek change. So the underexpressor seems to get to a point of breaking, like their relationships break down, everything's breaking down, and at that point, they look for help. It's difficult for them to ask for help before that. So for underexpressors, the danger is in not learning how to hold, understand, or deal constructively with angry or harmful feelings. So if you're an underexpresser, you suppress your emotions. You need to learn to hold the emotion, understand the emotion, and deal constructively with the emotion. Okay? Because here it's saying the danger is that they don't learn how to do this. And what I'm telling you in a positive way is what your job is, how to hold, how to understand, or how to deal constructively with angry or harmful feelings. Because if you don't, then you develop self-blame, agitation, lack of energy, no fullness in life, and then in the most extreme cases, passive or active suicide is taking it to the extreme. So if you are an underexpresser of emotions, the first thing would be to actually know that you're experiencing the emotion. You have to be able to classify, to be able to define the emotion. So in all these papers is finding the definition. Once you've got the definition of what you're experiencing, hold it, don't reject it. Don't immediately want to get rid of the emotion. So in meditation, you're sitting with the emotion, you're giving it space, and then you're analyzing it to try to understand, so where does this emotion come from? How does this emotion feel in the sense of what size is it? Does it have a shape? Does it have a color? So when you start looking at it and asking these questions, then often it starts to get smaller and more manageable than just being an emotion that takes over everything. So now we get to the question, what do emotions do for us? Do they do anything for us? So we've been talking about the negative, and we're saying, well, anger's difficult, jealousy's difficult, these negative emotions are difficult. So then what can emotions do for us? Or do they do anything for us? Is there anything positive about them? So think about how emotions communicate and influence others. So if you're emotional, you can actually use it to communicate and have some sort of influence over others. And that's done through body language. Facial expressions communicate faster than words. Facial expressions. So it's said that something like, I think it was 60% of communication is through body language. Isn't it? Something like 70. You're up to 70. In New Zealand, it's 70. The rest of the world, it's 60. In Australia, it's probably 100% because you don't open your lips. The flies go in. You have to talk like that. So a lot of the communication is through the body language. So we have to be aware of our body language, and is the body language communicating what we want it to communicate, or is it at odds with the words? So when somebody's saying, I'm not angry, but you can see they're angry. I'm not upset, but they're really upset. This juxtaposition between the emotion and the body language. And so you can see in the body language what they're experiencing, but what they're telling you is the opposite of the body language. So what's important is to communicate to others and to send them a message. And when we want to communicate and send them a message, it's difficult in that time for us to change our emotions. So we're feeling an emotion, we want to communicate, but the communication has to be clearer and more direct, rather than saying, I'm not experiencing that, I'm not angry, I'm not upset, denying what you're feeling, because your body language is already telling them how you're feeling. Emotions organize and motivate action. They organize and they motivate action. So emotions are motivating our behavior. And the action urge connected to specific emotions is often hardwired. Do you know hardwired? Neither do I. It's can't be changed. It's like, hard. This is a hardwire as opposed to Wi-Fi. So when they're talking about hardwired, it's you keep doing it over and over in a similar way, and so you lay down these pathways that when you have this emotion, this is the result. The behavior, this behavior is this result. And so anger, this is what I do. Hatred, this is what I do. So the action urge connected to specific emotions is often hardwired in the sense of when I feel anger coming up, I have a specific thing that I do. When hatred comes up, I have a specific thing I do. So emotions prepare us for action. They save time in getting us to act in important situations, also motivating us to act in difficult or dangerous situations. So I often make a joke about this, that, think about long time ago, the dinosaurs, and this dinosaur comes near you, and so you don't have these emotions, right? If you didn't have these emotions, you'd look at the dinosaur and you'd be thinking, oh, that's a nice looking creature, how sweet it looks. We evolve from there, but still imagine that you've got the dinosaur book and you're looking through the dinosaur book for the photograph of this dinosaur to see whether it's vegetarian or meat eating. And in the meantime, it's chomped off your head. So the point about this fight or flight was you got the energy in the body when you're in danger to run. You're driving a car, somebody nearly hits you, you've got the energy to be able to quickly think and quickly do what's appropriate. You're driving along, there's a kangaroo in the middle of the road, you have to know what to do so that you save lives, not just react in a negative way. So emotions are there to motivate us, to get us to act, but is the action appropriate for the situation? So now this is the question that you have to ask yourself. In that hard wiring, is the action appropriate for the situation? So when you have whatever emotion it is, and you've been researching your emotions in the last few days, you're looking for the strongest emotion. And when you're researching your strongest emotion, you're asking yourself, when I react from this emotion, is it always the best way to react? Is there a better way to react? Should I react in that way? Should I change it? If I want to change it, which way would I change it? So we're still doing the research. We haven't made a decision, but whatever that emotion is it appropriate for the situations that you're in? Then emotions can be self-validating. Emotions can be self-validating. Our emotional reactions to other people and to events can give you information about the situation. This will become clear maybe. But when this is carried to an extreme, emotions are treated as facts. If I feel incompetent, I am. If I get depressed when left alone, I shouldn't be left alone. So sometimes we have messages that happen in our head because of the situation. We're putting ourselves down, or we're feeling depressed, or we're feeling sad, or whatever we're feeling. So the example here is, I feel incompetent. I feel like I can't cope. When you say that in your head, then we're thinking this is true. We're not challenging it. We're just thinking it, and then thinking it must be true because it's a message in my head. So these are called self-validating emotions. The emotional reaction that we're having to a situation can give you information, but when you take that information to a critical, judgmental extreme, then that judgmental extreme can be acknowledged by you as being the truth. I'm no good. I'm bad. I'm terrible. I'm awful. I can't do it. I'm useless. These sort of judgments that people put on themselves and then keep repeating like a mantra, so that in the end for them it becomes the truth, how they're living. The problem is inappropriate emotions, not emotions. Right? So the problem, we're not saying here the problem is emotions. What we're saying is the problem is inappropriate emotions. Are you experiencing the correct emotion for the situation? For instance, I should run because the dinosaur is about to chop my head off. Is that an appropriate emotion to run? Or should you be patient and just sit there because the dinosaur's there? So that's an old example, but in the example of modern world, we're at work, we've given examples of people who can be angry, who can be difficult with you. When the anger arises, is it an appropriate emotion to deal with the co-worker or the boss, or is it going to create more problems in the work environment? These are the things that you have to think about. I can't give you the answer because I don't know the situation, but you have to start thinking about, in a situation where the co-worker is angry, the boss is angry, what is the appropriate emotion to deal with the situation? We need to start thinking about it. Is it appropriate to get angry? When emotions control us instead of us controlling them. So we need to think about difficult situations where the emotions start to arise. Are you in control of the emotion, or is the emotion now controlling you? When the emotion is controlling you, you have no choice as to what's happening. Instead of giving us useful information and communicating with others, it then triggers dysfunctional behavior because it's gone to an extreme. So, just to repeat, emotions will give you information. But remember, you're coloring, you're flavoring the information. Okay? It's not coming from wisdom, it's coming from emotion. If you look at the root of the word emotion, to emote means to churn up what's peaceful. Right? So the mind is peaceful. You're taking a peaceful, placid mind, you're churning it up to emote. Emotion means to create disturbance. Okay? So whether that disturbance is compassion or hatred, still it's disturbing the mind. Compassion in a positive way, in the sense of I see suffering and I'm moved. I'm getting information and I'm being moved to do something about it. In the negative way, I'm seeing something bad happening and I get angry and then I want to do something about it, but from the perspective of anger. So, flavored by the anger, I'm seeing the situation, I get a lot of energy. If I'm under control, I could use that energy to try and change the situation, to try and help. But if the anger takes over, then the anger is probably going to make me say or do something that I wish I hadn't said or done later. I'm going to go out of control. Do you understand? So the emotion is coloring. No matter which emotion it is, it's providing a color or a flavor to the situation. So perhaps the example I can give is clear water, or a clear tablecloth, or a white piece of paper. You can have a white piece of paper and put a colored crystal over it, blue crystal over it. When you're looking at the paper through the blue crystal, the paper looks blue. If you've got hepatitis, everything looks yellow, but it's not yellow. When you're angry, hurt, upset, jealous, any of the 84,000 delusions, whatever you're experiencing is being colored by your delusion. You can't think that what you're experiencing is the truth because it's coming through the filter of emotion. You got it? Because there's a filter, we're not seeing the absolute truth. We're seeing maybe some truth. Then there's a reaction, because that's what emotions are supposed to do. They're supposed to emote, stop the mind being peaceful. You got to do something. You know, there's a fire, there's danger, there's something happening where you need to do something about it. That's okay. But if you take your emotion to the extreme, then there's a possibility that the emotion will not be appropriate, that the response will be inappropriate. And this is when, for instance, in relationships, when you're fighting over money or whatever it is, property or anything, I think the biggest fights are probably about money. Because before people get into a relationship, they don't talk about money. Most relationships don't talk about money. So they get into the relationship, and then one side's assuming we'll put the bank accounts together, the other side's assuming separate bank accounts, and then the fights start over the money. And then it can be, you're a miser, you're really tight, you want to keep hold of your money. Well, you want to spend my money, don't you? And, the arguments can go backwards and forwards, and you can say really horrible things. And then the next day, when the coloring is not there, you've gone back to the patience, the placid mind. Then you think, oh, terrible. I said some terrible things. I wish I hadn't said it. And now you've got to fix it. But the trust has been eroded. So in the saying of these negative things from the emotion, you're taking away some trust between the two people. Whether it's a relationship or friends or a group or whatever it is, you're taking away some trust. And then you start sowing seeds of doubt. So what we're saying here is, look at your behavior, look at the emotions. Do you ever get to dysfunctional behavior? And if you do, how does it end up there? And that paper I gave you today may help you. It was 1 to 100, wasn't it? Intensity of emotion, 1 to 100. So if you wrote 120, you're in trouble. But it's 99, 100. If you sometimes experience that emotion to that extent, we can probably say it's dysfunctional. And then how to reduce the intensity, how to use the energy for something more positive as opposed to more negative. Okay? Clear? So we're not judging and criticizing emotions. What we're saying is, emotions are useful for us. They're communicating, they're giving us information, they're giving us activity, action. We can do things with the emotions. But what happens when it goes to the extreme? And we've all experienced the extreme, right? So when it goes to the extreme, out of control, and then how to bring it back from the extreme, that's individually our research, what we need to take responsibility for. We're not, by the way, we're not researching the family or the friends. You're only researching yourself, not your mother. Yeah, because you can't go home to your mother and say, okay, I've got this paper, which proves you're emotionally out of control. Not like that. It's that I then know the trigger is the mother. That when the mother comes and wants to talk about clothes, food, relationships, hair, whatever it is, there's a trigger. And you can stay calm. You're reciting in your head the mantra, Dalai Lama, Dalai Lama, be calm, be calm. But something can be said that triggers you. So you have to know what your trigger is. Is it the situation around? Is it the other people around? Is it that you're tired, you're hungry? What can be the trigger for you? For many people, it's alcohol. They say that you drink 1 glass of alcohol, scientists say, 1 glass of alcohol, you lose the ability to judge your behavior. 1 glass of alcohol means 1 beer, 1 glass of wine. We're not talking huge amounts of alcohol. 1 glass. You lose the ability to discriminate, to know your behavior. So Buddha said, if you can, avoid intoxicants because it creates confusion. Okay, then to reduce emotional vulnerability, how to do that? What do we need to do? To reduce vulnerability, number 1, treat physical illness. Take care of your body. See a doctor when necessary. Take medication. I didn't say meditation, medication. So if there's something wrong with your body, if there's medication, take it. Don't say, I'm a meditator. I can meditate my way out of this. We're in a time when we have the ability to take herbal medicines, Western medicines, whatever. If there is help there, take it, and at the same time do your meditation. Do both. But don't deny Western medicine or Chinese medicine, homeopathy, whatever it is. But consult somebody who can help you if you've got physical problems. Because otherwise, the physical problems will take a lot of your energy. And then you become vulnerable to emotions because you're tired. Okay? So number 1, treat physical illness. Number 2, balanced eating. Balanced eating. Not eating too much, but also not too little. Not too much, not too little. Stay away from foods that can make you overly emotional. So if your mother always cooked Vienna Schnitzel on Sunday, or a roast on Sunday, or whatever it is, the meatloaf or vegetarian burger or whatever it is, and then you think, oh, my mother, and it makes you feel emotional. Some foods can make you feel emotional. So if you're feeling susceptible to emotions, be careful of food that can make you emotional. Number 3, avoid mood-altering drugs. Mood-altering drugs. This is including alcohol, but it's non-prescribed drugs. Be careful. One friend of mine, she started taking Prozac. She's Buddhist, but got into some sort of depression. She started taking Prozac, and after 6 months, she gave up. She said she couldn't take it anymore. She said what happened for her was everything became grey. No emotional reaction, nothing happening. She said she didn't feel anything. So this can be the effect of even prescribed drugs. So if you take non-prescribed drugs, ecstasy, I remember when I was in Goa, there were so many drugs. There was this death drug, MDM, I think MDM, where you go through a death experience in about 20 minutes, but you think it's hours. And so you die with this drug. You don't actually die, but you go into death and you see the clear light and all these sort of things happen. People who tried it said if you've never used drugs before, you could go insane with this drug. It's become very popular again, I heard, MDM. LSD, well, what can we say about LSD, right? Those were the strange times. I was in London when LSD came out, and many people died. They thought they could jump off buildings and fly and all sorts of things. You don't know what it's going to do to you. You have no idea when you take that pill what it's going to do to you. Ecstasy, we find out later, it's destroying the brain. And then now there's this ice, isn't it? What's it called? Meths? Yeah. Terrible stuff. You take it once, you're addicted. The brain has already changed from taking it once. Yeah. So now CD, what's it called? CDC or C? There's a label CBC or cannabis that's manufactured that they're using the oils C CBD. So seems to be very effective for some people with cancer and things like that. But you need a professional to help you. You know, actually, in some places in Europe, you can walk into a shop and just buy it, and you can buy it online. I think if you're going to use something like that, it's very potent, and you need to have help. You can't just go and buy it and use it and think that you know how to use it. And also, you need people to evaluate you and whether your behavior is changing because it's potent. So that's why you have a professional who helps you to just evaluate. I know one lady who uses it for cancer, and I know she uses it every evening, and she becomes very, very chatty online, very chatty. So these huge messages will start appearing. She's very quiet all day until she's taken this CBD, and then off she goes. And she'll ask me questions, and it goes backwards and forwards. And her whole personality changes because of it. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But just I see the change of personality. Yeah. She likes it in it. Yeah. Yeah. The effect is stronger and can actually change your personality. Yeah. Because we talked about this, that the one that's taken out. There's a guy in Rajasthan who's producing it in India, and much, much cheaper than the West. Yeah, yeah, you can have both, with and without, and he's growing it organically and all the rest of it. So she was telling me about all this, and there's a friend of mine who was experiencing, well, he had one leg cut off and experiencing terrible pain. So I bought it for him to put on the leg without the TSH, or something that they put on for the gangrene or something, and then he was taking something, but he didn't like it at all. He said it made him really dizzy. So it won't work for everybody, but if it changes your behavior and you go out of control, then again, it's as if your emotions are taking over, but it's actually a drug. And I think this cannabis, of course, it must be beneficial for some cancer, but yeah, but some people are being cured from it, they say. Yeah, yeah. So we can't rule it out, but just be careful. Yeah. Disgusting. Oh, godlike, godlike, dog-like. It's getting worse. It went from godlike to dog-like. Yes, yes. And then 30 years later, they're still doing the same thing. That's the problem. I used to meet people in Goa who'd been using, well, alcohol for a long time, drugs for a long time, whatever they were using. Always similar experiences that they talk about. They often talk about previous experiences, and they're always trying to regain those previous experiences. So I can only cite Lama Yeshe, because he had a lot of experience in this matter in the 70s. A lot of people using LSD and those sort of drugs, marijuana, so they'd wander up the hill at Kopan smoking dope. I mean, it was growing in the Kathmandu Valley. In Rishikesh, it's still growing everywhere. So people were smoking it and wandering up the hill, cool baby, you know, wanting to meet the cool Lama, like this. That's where he learnt his English, from these hippies. And then they'd say to Lama, uh, I've used drugs and I've had this incredible experience. Can I continue? What should I do? And he'd say, well, if you have an incredible experience, that's wonderful, but don't continue. Just leave it as it is, that you've had that wonderful experience. But otherwise, If you keep looking to the drug to give you the experience, you're not going to have the experience from your own meditation. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's chemicals happening in the brain and giving incredible things happening. But actually, in the end, you want it to happen through your meditation, not through a pill, because otherwise we become dependent on the pill. And what happens is your body builds up a resistance to it, and then you have to do more of it. And that's when it can become dangerous, out of control. Lama Yeshe took LSD, I heard. I heard Lama Zopa also Lama Yeshe took. I don't know if I should be saying this publicly, um, but nothing happened. You know, exactly. You know, in the 70s, people were saying, Lama, if you ever used LSD, you'll get this incredible experience. So Lama said, okay, give me the pill. And he took the pill and he sat there and he was saying, okay, so what should happen? So when will it start? And they say, well, you should be experiencing this by now. No, nothing's happening. And he's out there for hours, nothing happening, nothing happened. So, they say these lamas, they can't get drunk. You can't affect their minds because they're such high level. But for us, it can really affect our minds because we're not under control. I would think don't play with it. Yes, yes, yes. I think medical benefits, yes. But I think psychological benefits from the point of view of looking for meditation through drugs, forget it. And there's now electronic devices you can put on your head that make you meditate, all this sort of thing. But in the end, you might discover it created cancer. You don't know what these devices are going to do because we haven't used them for 20, 30, 40 years. Somebody decides this pulsation will be beneficial, will make you meditate, etc. And then in 10 years, you could discover it made tumors happen in the brain. So I think, yes, there are medical benefits from these things, but just be cautious and careful and investigate and check it out. Number 4, balanced sleep. Balanced sleep. So number 3 was mood altering drugs. Number 4, balanced sleep, is getting the amount of sleep that helps you to feel good. We're not saying the number of hours, but the amount of sleep that helps you to feel good. I read a recent study from scientists that says sleep is paramount now, the most important of all the things that we're doing to keep us healthy, and that we actually need more sleep than we're getting. People are cutting down on their sleep, thinking they're being clever because they've got more hours to do other things. But the scientists are now saying you actually need a good amount of sleep to be healthy and for the brain to function properly, the body to function properly. What number that is your decision. Margaret Thatcher used to sleep 3 hours a night. And look at Margaret Thatcher. She went to war. Eh? She was a strong woman. So don't look at others and think, well, they manage on 6 hours or whatever. You get the amount of sleep that when you wake up in the morning, you feel refreshed. They say, I think it's women. I think women need slightly more than men in the scientific studies. I think it was 8 hours. Women need 8, men need 7.5, or the other way around. Anyway, it's half an hour between. But somewhere around 8 hours. But some people need 10, some people need 12. Find the number that's good for you. Yeah, yeah, and finding that. I find in different countries, you feel different. You feel sleepier when you go to one country. I find in Europe, I feel much more refreshed than, say, when I come back to Australia, because it takes time for everything to change, for your rhythms to change. So to find the right rhythm. And I think also it's very good to nap. In Europe, they have naps. You eat, you have a nap, and then you feel refreshed. And that now scientists are saying this is very healthy but 10, 15, 20 minutes, not an hour, you know? So when I was living in Goa, all the shops closed between 1 and 3. They were on a Portuguese system. When you're in Europe, often it's like that. It gets hot, you slow down, but they work longer days, you know, so they go until maybe 8 o'clock at night instead of finishing at 5 or 6, but they have that 2 hours off in the afternoon. So if you've got choice, try and organize it so after lunch you slow down a bit, and then in the afternoon you start to build up your energies again, not go, go, go all day. Number 5, get exercise. Do some sort of exercise every day. So it's building up to vigorous exercise where the heart has to increase. So nowadays it's said that walking is good for you, but quick walking, you know, not slow walking where the heart rate stays the same. And again, whatever exercise is good for you, because we can't say jogging's good for everybody, the gym's good for everybody. Find an exercise that you enjoy doing. It could be yoga, it could be qigong, tai chi, taekwondo, whatever it is, but something where you think, oh, I enjoy going there. I like the people, I enjoy the exercise. Usually it's better and easier to do with a group, isn't it? Even if you did, say, 3 times a week with a group, it's easier to keep going than if you're doing it on your own. So I think if you're starting exercise, try to start with a group, and then once you've got some expertise, continue on your own. Number 6, build mastery. mastery. Build mastery, to become a master. Not what you're thinking, domination. I will become the master of the world. Do one thing every day that makes you feel competent and in control. One thing every day that makes you feel competent and in control. Remember, we're reducing emotional vulnerability, the ability of emotions to take us over. So we need to have that feeling we are competent in one thing. I am in control of one thing. Because often when people are emotional, they feel they're incompetent and they're out of control. So it's very important to have this sense of being in control of your environment, of what's going on around you. Find a way of doing that. Doesn't have to be any big deal, but something, you know, like you've got a little pot plant. I heard recently growing tomatoes is the easiest thing you can do. It's like a hard plant to kill. So if you want to grow something, maybe grow a little tomato plant and it starts to give tomatoes, and you're so happy because you've got the tomatoes, and that makes you feel competent. So it doesn't have to be something huge, major, but should be on a daily basis that it gives you joy. It makes you feel competent and in control. Okay. Any questions? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Taking up a new language, a new hobby. I think that's very good for us because often people get to a certain age and they think, oh, I'm too old to do that or I can't do that. Again, you're providing limitations on yourself. Recently, there was this guy in his late 80s who went back to university, or 90s, and got a degree in language or something like that. There was another lady who finished a high school diploma and then went to college. She was in her 80s. Shouldn't be thinking that you can't do it. You've got to be thinking, I can do it, but start with something that makes you feel competent, not something that's beyond you. Because if you start out with something very difficult, I think I'll take up Latin. You know, if you're not good at languages, you could really have the feeling that you can't do it, and then you give up. So start with something easy and gradually build up. And then you'll have this feeling of confidence and control. Because when we're talking about low self-esteem, low self-confidence, how do we build up that confidence? And how do we stop ourselves being so emotional because we feel out of control, that we're not able to do things? Any other questions?
I thought you were talking about me when you were talking about the underexpression of anger guy.
Mm.
But the question you asked after that was who or what is in control, and I think for me the word control is the bit that has been the contributing factor to the underexpression, because I have always understood control as meaning
The over control.
don't
Yes.
show it.
Yes.
So that's a repression.
Yes.
So can you explain another word or another way for controlling it, as in not expressing it in the negative way or the
Managing. To be the manager of it instead of it managing you.
but not avoidance?
No. To be honest, if we talk about Dharma, we talk about, well, you shouldn't suppress it, etc. But I think my experience of working in business is you can't often express emotions because otherwise you're labeled. You know, did you see David sobbing in the bathroom again? You know, so you'll get labeled. And then from that label, then you'll experience difficulties within the job. So, of course, within the job, you want to be successful to whatever extent you can be in order to provide for your family, for your situation. So, when we're talking about emotions and underexpression, overexpression, the middle way is if you have the ability to talk about what's triggering you, what disturbs you, if you have that ability, you should be able to do it in a non-confrontational way, to be able to express it without the ego getting involved. I think the difficulty is when the emotion starts to appear, the ego comes along with it, and that combination of what we call ego, but Buddhism calls ignorance, that ignorance and the emotion together have disturbed the mind to the extent that you can't speak clearly and define clearly what's disturbing you, what you want to have happen, and how you want things to change. And that's where the emotions should be helping you to make those definitions, to make those parameters in work or at home, wherever it is. So I think we're baby emotional people. We're just babies. We're starting out at the baby level. We can't expect to be able to deal with these big emotions suddenly and be able to manage it. So then what should we do? Acknowledge the emotion so we're not suppressing. Because immediately by acknowledging, you're saying, I see you, but it's not an appropriate time to talk about this, to deal with this, because I'm busy at work. I can't deal with this now, but I see you, and when I get home, I'm going to work with this on the cushion. When you sit on the cushion, you allow the emotion to appear, and then you analyze the emotion. So I thought right now we're going to do that meditation of when in the past you've had an emotion, you're going to recreate it now as a meditation, just that emotion, that raw emotion, and sitting, observing it, being aware of it, just like that. So that's one suggestion for how to work with it. I think we shouldn't label all emotions bad. They're not all good. It's what do you do with the emotion that's going to be beneficial or harmful. So if you throw everything around the house, if you're really angry and you throw all the dishes and everything, the emotion wasn't beneficial. If you're at work and you get really, really angry and throw things at work, it wasn't beneficial. On the other hand, if you suppressed it, it also wasn't beneficial. Those two extremes are what's not beneficial. It's how to get to the middle way where I'm bringing wisdom into it, I'm bringing love and compassion into it, and then how to express it in a skillful way, in a positive way. This is done more on the cushion in the beginning. So we're retraining the hard wiring. Yeah, you know, recognize, label it. Oh, there's emotion, but I can't deal with it now. I'm very busy. I've got to write this. I put this energy into the work, and then later on the cushion, I'll deal with it. But then you must deal with it later, because otherwise it became repression, and then I'm avoiding, you know. And later you'll hear avoiding.
I've got a question.
Do you?
Yeah, I was always told off as a child for having too many questions. My oldest daughter, I reckon, is definitely an under-expresser.
Yeah.
I think she often doesn't express because she wants my love. So she won't argue or she won't complain about something because she wants my love. So
Right.
she kind of tends to just sort of squash it, and then she's prone to depression. She's prone to just kind of being in a room too long and being very low energy.
Yes.
Always getting viruses.
Yeah.
Sounds exactly like her.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering how I can kind of work with that, because she didn't start out like that. She kind of started out as hey mum, actually I'm the alpha female in the house. I'm the kingpin now. A few years ago. And I was like, well, actually no, but actually we don't even need to have that dialogue. And then she's kind of given up the fight. And she's let me be supreme for now. But then there's that kind of that low energy. So I'm wondering kind of what's another way to kind of, because I want her to have more energy again. I'd actually like a bit more of that fight back because it's actually better for her.
But when she was the manager, she had more energy.
Yeah.
Right?
When she thought she was alpha female.
Now she's subjugated. Less energy. So maybe she's got more male energy. Everybody's a balance of the two. Some more male energy, more female energy. Maybe she's got some more male energy at this age, which she's trying to find a way of expressing it, because she can't. Then she's going to go introversion and depression and pushing the energy down. So, again, it's about how to find mastery, how to be in control of something. Is this the 14 or the 16-year-old? Yeah. How to feel in control of something.
Without having to fight.
Yes.
Have the power and the presence.
Yes.
But without fighting.
Yes.
She only knew the way was to fight.
Yes. But it's how to give her responsibility, or, an area of responsibility where she can take over and do something and feel that she's mastered it, without having to ask, without having to be under somebody, but just an area of responsibility. You have to find that for her.
Yeah, she's had it in the working life. She earned money very, very early.
But at home, she needs it. The kitchen, or cooking, or anything, but just some area where she can thrive. Some kids love cooking, some hate it, some like doing something else, and some hate it. So you've got to find her interest. The garden, a little area where she can do some gardening. If you don't have a garden box, but a window box, but something where it's her responsibility. She can take care of it, and she can rejoice in it, that it's doing well, and you can compliment her and say, wow, you did a good job, like that.
She won't take my suggestions, so she has to do something that she comes up with.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make her think she thought of it. That's the job of a mother. Okay, people, we're going to meditate. So you need an emotion. Any emotion that you've experienced in the past, preferably a strong emotion that you find disturbing, and then you're going to re-invoke it. So the reason we're doing this is not to increase our emotions and make the mind more disturbed, but to understand the emotion and to put it in perspective. So start out by sitting comfortably, taking 3 deep breaths. Breathe all the way down into the abdomen. Breathing in peace and breathing out thoughts. And then in your mind, remembering a time when you had a strong emotion, allowing that emotion to appear, feeling it completely, but also observing it, how it can change form, and how it can change into something else. So sometimes we have a primary emotion, and then there's a secondary emotion. So just sit with that emotion and see what information it has for you. What can you learn from it? What's it telling you? Does the emotion have a shape, a color? Is it in a particular part of the body? Or does it completely take over the body? So when you've had this disturbing emotion in the past, did you have a technique to deal with it? Did you suppress the emotion? And did suppression work? And when you suppress the emotion, how does it make you feel? Have you felt that it's better to express these emotions, to let them out? And if you did, how has this worked? How has this made you feel? And how has this made others feel? Especially people you have close relationships with. Can you imagine that there might be a different way to deal with emotions that doesn't involve suppression or acting out? Can you imagine that it might be possible to acknowledge the emotion and deal with it by transforming the energy and the nature of the emotion? you do accept that there is a possibility of just observing the emotion, not being the emotion, and being able to transform the emotion from destructive or harmful energy into helpful energy, beneficial energy. Then that's the beginning of change. Change can happen. And for the last 3 minutes, just going back to the breath, the sensation of the breath as you're breathing down into the abdomen, letting go of all thoughts, sounds, sensations, just returning to the breath and letting everything else go. As I breathe out, I let go. And then slowly bring your mind back to the room we're sitting in, the cushion you're sitting on, and the meditation we've just been doing. We're going to dedicate with Shantideva. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you.